There's nothing wrong with not having a handheld that folds, but for real, why are there no middle ground folding systems in the market today? And you don't count! We are now living a historical moment for handheld emulators. The Anbernic RG35XXSP is the first handheld emulator to replicate the Game Boy Advance SP form factor.
Oh, but the Palkitty V...
I know, alright? Of course, other products existed like the Palkitty V90, but it was a device intended to be necessarily cheap. Because of that, sure, you would enjoy some Game Boy, GBA, and even Super Nintendo, but it was it. Not exactly a premium experience, especially compared to MIYOO's or Anbernic's devices. In the other side of the spectrum, we have devices like the iNew Flip DS, which is bananas great. Greater than what I need for an everyday handheld, and greater than what I can pay for. People were desperate for a middle ground. Kids were crying, families lost their hopes. On May 11th, they posted on their official YouTube channel the official trailer for the Anbernic RG35XXSP. Well, let's make a deal here. Let's call it the RGSP. Please, that's gonna be way easier. Along with all the specs. With that, we could already take some conclusions. They were using the same CPU and GPU they have already used in lots of their previous devices, with an all-winner H700, same internal GPU and 1GB of RAM. Also the same battery, 3300 mAh. But after all, what games could it run? You might be a bit saturated about the all-winner H700, but here's a quick sum up. As expected, no surprises at all in Game Boy, Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Advance, except that RetroArch shows those dang cool automatic bezels whenever you're playing some emulators. Like, check out this Game Boy Advance SP bezel, it looks just like the original. Most Dreamcast games run, maybe not 100% since it's a more demanding system. Same thing with the Nintendo 64, like there are definitely gonna be audio stutters here and there, but you can still play most of them. Of course, trouble number 2 with those more high-end systems is clearly not having joysticks to begin with. Because of that, I have already engaged in some constructive discussions online, where some people would claim the device is objectively worse because it doesn't have joysticks, only a D-pad to play with. But I don't think it works that way. If you're getting a handheld that intentionally mimics the Game Boy Advance SP, you should be assuming to yourself that you're not buying it to enjoy the most out of home console games that usually have a completely different objective, gameplay-wise. However, you can still choose to use the D-pad to imitate joysticks in some systems, like the Dreamcast, making experiences that were not possible actually playable. So in the end, I would absolutely not buy the RGSP specifically to play games from systems like Super Nintendo, the Dreamcast, or any other that you can think of that relies big time on joysticks. And there's also the clear hardware limitation. One more sign that tells you that this was not made with those systems in mind. Like in Sonic 2, it runs around 30 FPS, reasonably playable, but you could turn down the resolution to raise it up a bit. Plus, sadly, it's not the best handheld to play DS games, except if the games that you wish to play make basically no use of touch screens or both the screens. Just remember that you can switch between the two screens pressing the shoulder buttons though. Well, maybe the stock software experience in this bad boy was not that huge of a surprise, but when we saw the hardware in the trailer, oh boy, some years ago or even some months ago, it was definitely not common to see a $64 device with 5 GHz Wi-Fi, Bluetooth 4.2, mini HDMI, headphones jack, and a rumble motor. Heck, I think the MIYOO Mini Plus only has the headphone jack, and its volume is so darn low, it's really low. Because of the advent of Bluetooth and HDMI out, we can now not only play the games in an external display, like say you're at your friend's house and either of you have a mini HDMI cable lying around, and your friends say, yo, let's play that Simpsons side-scrolling beat-em-up game, and you'd be like, oh, that's a bit random, but sure, why not? You can now literally turn on the living room TV, plug your RGSP on it, and that's it. Connecting a Bluetooth controller will automatically configure it to be the Player 2 controller, so like that's just really cool. Now, real quick, if you like the style of the videos I make, this channel is really new, so if you ever wanted to be part of a YouTube channel's history, here's your chance. I officially invite you to join us. Now, I have always liked the idea of being able to fold my device in half, both for transport and for the screen integrity issue. Nonetheless, I feel a bit hesitant when it comes to hinges. Like, you know the concept, the more moving pieces there is, the higher is the chance of losing a device you've paid for only because of such a delicate part. And like, I've seen tons of broken DS hinges back when I was little, but like my friends and I were just kids, so there was no way I could know if it was their fault or their DS's fault. But I don't know, I feel like they were not the most attentive kids in the world with their devices. According to Takeyudon, there's a relatively cheap industrial process a company can go through to make sure the hinge in their devices is solid enough. And since not many people own an RGSP yet, mostly creators do, it's hard to know how long it's gonna last in everyday usage. So if you're still on the fence about getting one specifically because of the hinges, you're probably not gonna lose too much if you choose to wait for some months to see if something pops up in other people's devices. If you're familiar with Moonlight, it's good to know that it's natively available in this device. And if you're not, well, basically Moonlight is a piece of software that streams games that are running on your PC to handheld devices. In one hand, it's fun to know that they made it available right off the box here, but I don't know, I don't see any actual real life case where I'm using this. There are way better handhelds for streaming out there, like your phone with an Xbox controller. And surely this is specifically applied here because you don't have enough controller inputs for any modern game. So I don't know, it's here. Now, from what I've seen, differently from many other handheld emulators, the stock OS in this one is quite competent, with a few caveats. In the app section, you can find the Quick Shutdown Set app, which is where you go to configure the sleep function, which is not by any means exclusive to foldable gadgets, but I think it's a more delicate feature here because we have a power button that we can press or hold, as well as the screen that could be set to sleep or shut down when closed. So how does all of that work out in the stock OS? Thankfully, we are able to configure all of that in this menu. In this first screen, we can enable or disable the quick shutdown feature. If we choose to enable it, pressing Y, then now we can pick what the device is gonna do when we close the clamshell. Now, believe it or not, this screen is really important, and it requires some testing before actually knowing if putting the device to sleep is, in practice, better than just shutting it down. According to Retro Game Corp's testings, setting the RGSP to sleep when you close it will make it basically instant to get back to gaming once you open it up. But it still drains way too much juice when it's sleeping, more or less 4% per hour, which is way more than your phone drains, or should drain. So in the end, the recommendation is to just use the shutdown feature, which I think it's really well implemented. You see, once it's activated, now if you close the clamshell, the device is automatically gonna create a save point exactly where you're at the moment you close it. Now, holding the power button will turn it on, but since you've turned it off by closing the shell, it will bring you exactly where you stopped. This way, 0% energy is wasted, in exchange of having to wait around 20 seconds to get back to your gameplay. You know, sounds reasonable to me, since you don't have to manually open the game and select your save state. It's all pretty seamless if you put up with the waiting time. Knowing myself as much as I do, I would totally close the clamshell to sleep all the time and eventually forget it sleeping there, so it would be completely drained when I pick it back up to play something. Also, something that's really me is that things get old really fast for me visually, and that's for pretty much everything. That's why I have like 6 different phone cases, each one of a different color. This is not something I've considered doing with my MIYOO Mini Plus. There are some great button and faceplates customization options out there, but I'm surely not brave enough to open up mine to do that. Yet, this is awesome news about the RGSP. Anbernic made a pretty easy customization option for the back of the clamshell. Not as easy as I wish it was, but you know what, it's alright. You don't have to unscrew the whole thing for that, at least. Another great thing is that in order to customize your device, you just have to follow a specific size measurement, and you're pretty much able to just print your own skins. And this is really so cool. Like, I'm surely having lots of custom ones that I've printed and designed myself. This will happen. Now, of course, that will only work for transparent models. Up until this point, I was not considering the idea of getting one, especially because I like the idea of replicating the original looks and feels, and the silver one just reminds me way more of the original GBASP. But now I have no more questions. I'm surely picking up the transparent model. It's only because of the customization option. That's the only reason. What you need to do though is remove the rubber stoppers and do a little bit of a teardown, but You know what? I can put up with that, since that means I don't have to spend any money at all to customize my device. Last but not least, yes, it's a model made towards portability, but I'm not sure if it's that much better than a regular RG35XX Plus model or a MIYOO Mini Plus. It looks pretty bulky inside pockets. Like, of course it's portable, but I think it would be way cooler if they could manage to make the body a little bit more slim. But I don't know if that's viable in practice, so it's alright. It's definitely bigger than both the V90 and the original GBA SP, but makes it more comfortable, yet a bit more noticeable when carrying around. Overall, this is a great device, and I can't wait to put my hands on one. If only Anbernic could be a good company and send me one for review.